Hello everyone, my name is Gregor Jarisch. I work for EdTech Foundry. It's a company in Norway, located headquarters in Oslo. My apologies, I caught a cold a few days, so if I'm a bit struggling with the voice, so I'm sorry for that. So basically what we do is we develop education technology for students and teachers to make students' life more easier and more successful on the long road. Here's the problem. A lot of students start studying at the university, but they drop out. It's a huge number. When I started at the company, I was asked, what do you expect? Like, what do you think? Like, how many people drop out? And it was like, probably 20%, maybe 25%. But actually, this is a number from the US. 44% don't finish the bachelor degrees. And we thought that's a big problem we need to solve, because it's really not good that people drop off. And why do they drop off? Well, it has a lot to do with frustration. People start studying and then it's just overwhelming. They have a lot to do. There are so many things they need to know. They have this typical FOMO, the fear of missing out. They struggle big time. So what we had as an first idea is we need to change the way we learn. Usually in a lot of universities we have this typical passive learning, right? The passive learning, you sit in class, you listen to the teacher, you get tired, you fall asleep. But actually that's not the way we believe learning should be these days. It should be an active way of learning. You should be engaged. You should collaborate with your fellows. You should really be passionate about what you learn. And if you're passionate about what you learn, chances are high you don't get frustrated because you keep the right pace. You do the stuff when you're supposed to do it and actually, therefore, succeed in your studies eventually. So what we came up is, after various studies and questionnaires to our students, that we need to increase the engagement. When we increase the engagement, the retention will increase as well. So that's why we created Differ. Differ is a chatbot, is a communication application, a bit similar to Slack, Facebook groups and all that. But inside there is a chatbot. And the chatbot is a virtual teaching assistant helping students out. So you can direct questions to it. And the other way around, it will also follow up and reminding different things, such as, hey, you should do the homework, or hey, you have a lecture coming up, maybe you should do something. So the chatbot itself is just like a chatbot buddy. So as you would have it in a friend list, and you would just be able to direct the questions, ask for homeworks, ask for deadlines, name of the teacher. You know that the frequently asked questions every student has and every teacher's need to answer all the time and really are, on that level when they hear about it. So our estimates, based on the surveys we made, based on the conversation we had with students and teachers, is those FAQs that students raise all the time. If that would be covered by a chatbot, it would save up to 40%. 75 maybe, because some people keep asking, what was the homework again? Sorry, I didn't get that. What was the homework again? Those people probably the 75%. But to be realistic, probably a third or more. So since we believe you shouldn't just build a product when you have a hypothesis, you should prove it first. So that's why we actually didn't start programming before we actually had proof that what we believe, that engagement is the key, was proven. So what we did, we started out in Slack and just pretended to be a chatbot and tried out different kind of things. And we realized that when the chatbot is posting stuff compared to teachers posting stuff, we have a much higher engagement in the way that it triggers the behavior. People click on it and stuff like that. It also immensely important how you structure the way you post, obviously. So it is always important when you follow up, I mean, probably as a human being as well, but especially if a chatbot, the first thing somebody reads, it has to be some context awareness. So when I read a message, I need to have the feeling within the first sentence it's related to me. And it's not just a general announcement or something like that. It should be something that touches me in some way, that I have the feeling, okay, at least I should keep reading. Another thing that is very important, that it has some sort of action. So if you can click something, you can follow up. It's not just a reading and a passive thing, but you can actively do something. And sometimes it's also good to raise a question, maybe a question that kind of may be answered if you click on it. So that it's kind of clicking in the curiosity of students. So a lot of students fall behind. And I said a lot of students actually drop out, about a third or more, but actually almost every single student, at least one time in their studies, will fall behind. And just a quick question, all of you who studied at high school or university, raise your hand if you ever had the feeling you were falling behind in your studies, didn't make the homework. Okay, everybody else, I suppose you guys lying, but anyways, it happens, and it's okay, because, I mean, obviously you have the feeling, well, there's a homework due, and it's in 2 weeks, and wow, 2 weeks is a long time ago, today's a party, I want to go to the party, no matter, I do it tomorrow. And doing tomorrow, day after day, you know, eventually tomorrow will be the homework, and you ended up not having it. So having a chatbot that kindly reminds you about, hey, there's a homework coming up, or hey, you should hand in a paper in 2 weeks, do you need any help? And having the right timing to do so is a key trigger to actually motivate the people and prevent the fear of missing out and prevent the urgency of being stressed that all of a sudden you have a deadline in front of you and you don't know how to handle it. So interestingly, when we did the study, we figured out there is enough information available and there are enough people to ask if you don't know. So a natural question to ask our students, if you don't understand anything, why didn't you ask? And the interesting answer from the student was, well, because I don't know. Or another one, because I'm afraid. And that was an interesting aspect, because if you're a freshman at a university and you come to university and you might be not, you know, self-esteem endlessly, you have a hard time in the beginning, maybe get to know people. And what we realized is that one very important aspect is to create social bonds rather than just providing information. And that's one reason why we actually created Differ as a communication platform, to not only try to increase engagement, but also to foster social bonds. And the way we do this is one aspect. I mean, there are various situations, but one is that in the onboarding, when we onboard the users to our application, we ask him if he wants us to introduce him to other colleagues. So what happens, you go to Differ and the chatbot says, hey, I'm Differbot, so and so. Let me introduce you to colleagues that you will be studying with. And here's Tom, here's Anne. Hey, these two will be freshmen as you are. You will be in the same class. How about you guys introduce each other? So for that reason, the first time you show up at university, the first time you enter a course, you already know people. And that's really powerful. So basically, this is the example of it, right? We ask if the person actually wants to be introduced. I mean, it's a good point, right? You don't want to be forced to be introduced, so you always give the option if yes or no. And then the Differbot starts looking, you know, because people onboard in different timing, and then we kind of try to match, not like Tinder, but generally, you know, at least freshmen, seniors, stuff like that, trying to get together, and then say, okay, we put you guys into the group. And then, you know, introduce each other. And actually it works pretty good, because we figured out people are less afraid to talk when they feel they are in small groups rather than a big group with 100 people. If it's just 2 or 3 people, they actually engage much more. We had to test competition, obviously. And most universities who realized that engagement is a key element actually already trying some sort of social media channels in order to foster the engagement. And most of the time they use Facebook, because everybody's on Facebook, and they use Facebook Messenger. And what we tried, just to testing, and a lot of numbers, is not so important what these numbers are, but the point is having a chatbot raised the participation and engagement much more compared to when only humans were communicating. And probably you guys have seen it before. You are in a Messenger Facebook group. Everybody is there, some people post, nothing happens. Nobody replies, nobody does anything. You see, everybody has seen it, right? The little icons at the top, but nobody does it. So why is that? Well, it's relatively interesting. It's the case that a chatbot is a machine. So first of all, chances are very low that you get embarrassed, because it's a machine, right? I mean, most people don't understand that there is a human being behind who eventually going to read this conversation logs anyway. But apart from that, the belief is that if you have a chatbot in front of you, it doesn't matter how stupid the question is you ask, you're not going to be embarrassed and nobody's going to laugh at you. you can trust it because, as we said, as a teaching assistant, we kind of transport a certain trust as the information that we provide will be correct. And obviously it saves time, because if you send an email to the teacher and the teacher gets 100 emails per day, sometimes happens that it takes a week until you get an answer. Problematic if the homework is due to the next day, right? So that's why it makes much sense to talk to the chatbot 24/7. So even if you're a night person, 3 o'clock in the morning, you still have somebody you can ask what was actually the homework. Something very important is the triggering of events when they happen. Because, I mean, obviously when the student asks stuff, it makes sense to answer it. But very much important it is to remind the student about something. So imagine you're 2 hours in front of the next lecture. And you actually, didn't prepare, you're just on the way there. And then the chatbot kicks in and say, hey, you actually should have watched this video in order to know what's going to go on in this lecture. But hey, here's the link, how about you watch it on the way there? It's not the ideal scenario because they should have prepared the day before, and we know students should be fine. But actually, it's much better for both sides, the students as well as the teacher, if at least in the metro or somewhere, they have just watched the video. Because what we realized, and this is already running in production at some point, that they actually not just sitting there and like, what is the subject today, but since they are prepared, even if it was just a few minutes before the lecture started, they're sitting there and already having questions to the teacher. And what's very interesting, apart from the students having a better life, the teachers having a better life too, because what really is the big thing for the teachers, if they have the feeling they are appreciated, if they have the feeling it matters that they are there, if they have the feeling what they try to transport as information is valued by the students. And if the students are prepared, even if it was just 2 minutes before the lecture, and have a question regarding that one video they just watched before, then they have a good feeling. And if the teachers have a good feeling, they have a much bigger pace doing stuff. So I'm running out of time, is that correct? So give me 2 more quick slides, very important. Tips for building chatbots. What we figured out, it's very good to keep it small and simple. Small and simple, also the third one, I wouldn't recommend to build one big chatbot. Unless you Apple, Amazon, or have hundreds of people working on it, build small ones. You might, for UX reason, communicate to the outsider that it's just one single bot, but technically I would build hundreds of bots. Imagine a company, and in a company you have hundreds of employees, right? You don't have the one single guy who knows it all. You have hundreds of people with various skills. And if somebody doesn't know, you just hand over the conversation. So it really makes sense to have multiple chatbots and you hand over the conversation to another one if the one chatbot doesn't know. It's a bit complicated, but if you go on scale, it's very important. Early user testing, very important. You need to make sure what you do is actually what the users need. And just the last slide before I stop talking. This from experience of, I developed chatbots since 2006. And this is the minimum you have to have in your chatbot development team in order to be successful. It's not enough to only have a developer. It's a good starting point. You have to have somebody who takes care that what you do actually makes sense for a business reason. But I think the dialogue designer is the most important role. It should not be a tech guy. It should be somebody who actually understands the difference between one word and another word, understands what power, psychological power stands behind words and what kind of difference it makes. Thank you very much.